Hello everyone and welcome to the table. So we have a brand new knife from Kizer, and this right here is their Drop Bear utility knife. And so Kizer has jumped on the bandwagon. They have released one of their most popular models in a utility blade configuration. So we can see a very familiar shape right here. This is the Kizer Drop Bear, but instead of your average blade, we have a removable, your basic box cutter utility blade. So very interesting. And so what we have right here is an early variant of the knife, because this one I picked up from Kickstarter. That seems to be where the idea originally got its footing. And so this one very recently arrived from that campaign, but I do know this knife is going to be commercially available very soon, if not, by the time you're watching this video. So very cool design, of course, because if you are familiar with the Kizer Drop Bear, again, like I was saying, it's one of the most popular knives that Kizer has released. Has quite a following, a lot of cool variants, and this is one of them. So what we're looking at right here, we do have a blade holder, as we can see. So let's just get right down to it. We can see this blade holder does not require any tools to remove the blade. And let's go ahead and try it out. We press down right here. Does require some force, but once you press down, the blade comes right out. And you can see there's a piece right here. And looking at it on the side, that piece, when it depresses, moves in and out right there. That is what holds the blade in place. So it does seem to click in pretty solidly. And the fact that it requires no tools is great. Although I will note, they are releasing a second variant of this knife that does have screws holding the blade in place, as opposed to this spring system. So I think you can have it either way with the Kizer Drop Bear utility. And so they call this one, you can see the name right here, the Utili-Bear 2. So maybe the Utili-Bear 1 is going to be the version that has screws up here on the blade holder. So let's wait and see on that. Kind of interesting design as well. And they went with some really cool scale choices here. So this is aluminum, a nice blue aluminum with kind of this interesting pattern worked into the handle. So very unique, very cool to look at. And the blue just pops really well. This one, it might be an exclusive to the Kickstarter campaign, because it looks like the release variants of this knife are going to have your standard, micarta, and plastic handles, essentially. And so stay tuned for that. I'm not sure if this is a particularly rare variant because of the Kickstarter, or if it's going to come back in some way, shape, or form. But some really cool things I noticed about this variant of the Kizer Drop Bear, especially in comparison to its regular counterparts here. Now, number one thing that you might notice, or you may not if you don't have both in hand, is the size, because the utility Drop Bear is smaller than our regular one. So, I mean, holding them side by side, you can tell they look very familiar, but look closer. Look at that overall length. Our utility version of the Drop Bear is just slightly smaller in overall dimensions. So that's kind of interesting that they went that way here. And maybe it's just to accommodate the size of the smaller utility blade. Maybe it didn't have to be bigger. But let's go ahead and check out the length of the knife. So our overall length of our Drop Bear utility right here from tip to end is about 6 3/4 inches long, compared to the regular size Drop Bear, which comes out to about 7 1/4 inches long. So there is definitely going to be a size difference when you see them side by side. Does it make a big difference in weight? I would say it does, because even though this variety has a aluminum handle, let's go ahead and check out the weight, because it does feel very lightweight in hand. So let's check it out. So our utility blade variant, 3 ounces, 3.08, as you can see. And comparing that here, this variant of the Drop Bear, this is a titanium handle, admittedly, so it's going to be heavier. And that one's coming in over 4.2 ounces. But I do have another lightweight variant of the Drop Bear here on the table. So let's look at a Drop Bear that has these Ultim scales right here. So this is their Halloween variant, but the Ultim, of course, very lightweight plastic. So let's check that out too. And here we go, 3.3. So it's getting very much closer in weight to our aluminum handled utility blade variant. So again, check those out side by side. You can see the blade length difference, handle difference as well. So very interesting. They went with the same design, but they downsized it. So that's kind of interesting. So I wonder what the whole thought process was there. So tell me your thoughts on that. But beyond that, they did make some pretty cool upgrades, I would say, to the Drop Bear as well on this variant. So take a look at first glance. Let's look actually at the hardware, the screws. So we can see the screw body right there. It's a nice deep head on that screw. And I was looking at it closely and I realized all of the screws on this knife, the pivot, as well as the body screws and pocket clip screws, they all use a T8 Torx bit. So that's really cool. You only need one bit size in order to disassemble this knife. So that is certainly an upgrade because, of course, most pocket knives use a T8 on the pivot and T6 on the pocket clip and body. But here they decided to consolidate. And as a result, I mean, side by side, we can check out the screws here. So we can see the nice deep screw head on this one versus the standard, rounded over screw on the standard Drop Bear. So very cool. So in my opinion, that is certainly an upgrade. You can see the difference in pocket clips as well. Standard, just loop over, deep carry pocket clip. It carries fairly flush to the handle. And of course, being a nice smooth aluminum, it goes in and out of pocket, no problem. So that's never going to be an issue for you. And like all of the Drop Bears, the action on this clutch lock right here, slash, axis lock, essentially, is great. It runs on bearings. So you can see it swings quite freely. Very easy to actuate, very fun to actuate, no issues there. I do appreciate on this blade holder design that we have right here, they did actually go ahead and they included a little finger choil right here. So you can actually kind of choke up, get a little bit closer to the edge, and you can still see there's plenty of safety right there. And you can definitely choke up on this blade, plenty of jimping along the spine of the blade holder right there. So depending on what you're using this utility knife for, very utilitarian, very useful. So you can definitely fully utilize all of this blade length that we have right here. So again, very smartly thought out. And again, the engineering that goes into these little pieces right here, always cool to see because companies do it differently for what is essentially, again, a box cutter. We see a lot of cool designs and different designs with this type of pattern. So let me show you some examples. So one of, again, the most popular utility blade knives that has come out recently comes to us from Civivi, and this is their Elementum utility knife. So we can see, again, the Elementum style handle, but we have the long, utility blade there. And this one is held in place by a screw. So this one needs a Torx bit in order to remove and change out the blades. And you really want to torque it down to make sure it's not loose, as you're playing with the knife. Flipper action, of course, great action as Civivi would do. But you can see the mechanism, the holder right here, how that works in comparison. And we also have what else on the table? We have one from, this is O-Knife, so O-Light. They have this is their Autical U1, the U1. And a toolless option right here, we can see a little thumb screw you can use to loosen the blade, but we still get all that lovely edge exposed. And again, a unique design, blade holder right here, single screw, thumb screw at the top. So in that way, it's similar to this one in that it has a screw, but it doesn't require tools. So the Autical U1 right here. But looking at something more full-sized, like the Drop Bear, we have the new knives, Companter right here. So what this one, again, has a thumb screw up here, but again, a slightly different design for holding in these blades. So pretty cool. So nice big blade holder there. Again, a big full-size knife. And can you see the trend? And that's why I make these comparisons, because a lot of these companies, they make pocket knives. They make great pocket knives, but now they're dipping their toes into the utility knife market because they've noticed it seems to be quite lucrative. So Kizer is just the latest entry in a very crowded field, but they have a really nice entry to be said for it. So the Drop Bear utility blade, excellent action, great Kizer quality, just as you would expect. Inside the box, we get an extra 10-pack of Work Pro blades, a sticker, and they include some extra hardware as well, because one of the little hidden features on this knife, take a look down here at the bottom, you're going to notice these little protruding tools we get right here. Boom, tweezers. So these are Swiss Army knife style tweezers inside the handle of this knife. And you can't have tweezers without your toothpick. So we get a little toothpick right here. And maybe I wouldn't call it a toothpick because I wouldn't put a metal toothpick in my mouth, but a pick essentially. So you can use this to clean parts or do whatever you use it for. Very cool, very useful little extra tools included with this knife. How awesome is that? And the fact that they give you extras in the box. So we got extra springs, extra hardware, extra tools, extra blades. But that's really darn impressive for what you're getting here. So a lot of value here in this knife. So one last thing we'll do before we leave. I always like to test an interesting blade style because if you've ever used these concave hook blades, you know how useful this hooked blade can be in a utility knife. So let's go ahead and see if it works in this style of knife, because a lot of our folding knives don't really work well with the shape of this blade. So let's see if it is functional with this blade in here. Okay, and it looks like it may not be. It is not. Because you will notice the pattern on the blade right here. The pattern is the same, but the length is different. So you can see how the holes do not line up. So when you try and put this in here, that little clicky part does not line up there, you know? So maybe let's see if we can hack it to fit. Okay, so no, that's not secure. That is not secure. So these hook blades will not work with the Drop Bear. So again, I try this with every utility knife that I have to see what works. And these tend to work well in, a fixed blade utility knife, your classic in and out ones. So just think of that. So happy to test that out for you, but tell me your thoughts. What do you think about this particular variant of the Kizer Drop Bear? I love that they're getting into this style of knife. Would you like to see it on any other Kizer patterns? Maybe, who knows? But hope you all have a knife day out there, and I'll see you later.